Welcome to Boomer Gaming by Duncanus. A couple of weeks ago on my stream, I did a deep dive into a game called 1 Hour, 1 Life. A number of people have asked me to make this stream available on YouTube. So here's the video. It's pretty rough, largely uncut, just took out a few of the slower bits. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you do, please leave a like and subscribe to be notified when I post more videos. I stream every evening on Twitch as Duncanus from around 7 or 8 p.m. Alrighty, cool. So let's see, we got this up. So yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about 1 Hour, 1 Life. So I played this game about a year and a half ago, and it's this really wild social experiment game that a single developer built, right? So the premise of this game is that you, as you can see from the graphic behind me there, very, very simple graphics. It's all 2D. Everything just moves around on this flat plane. And the interaction is literally left mouse click and occasionally right mouse click, and that's the whole game, right? So what's interesting about the game is that you come into the game as a baby. So you're literally born into the game as a baby to a random player who is a female player in the game, what they call an Eve, right? So all female players are Eves. And so you're born as a baby and you are 100% completely dependent on your mother for survival. She literally has to breastfeed you so that you don't starve to death. So I'm gonna get the game up just quickly just to show you a few seconds of it and then talk about a few more things about it. One of the things that's amazing about this game is that with the scope of the game is that it was all developed by one guy. He did all the art, the programming, the whole lot. So I'm going to jump in. We'll probably die almost immediately. But I just want to give you guys a quick look view at what it looks like. Oh, there we go, log in. All right. So I'm going to be born in. So here I am. Oh, wait. Oh, that's the tutorial. Crap, I've never played the game on this computer. I should have known that. Let's see. So this gives you a bit of an idea that there's a little tutorial that comes with the game. So as a player, you have to eat, right? So you pick up berries and consume them by right-clicking. By default, you can only carry one thing at a time. Yeah, no, pretty wild graphics, huh? Let's see how quickly I can get through this thing. All right, so pick up a branch, and then we go over here, click on a rock. Okay, there's a rock. All right. All right, so now I have a sharp stone. Take it with me. So basically, you can pick up an item and then click on other things with it, right? So click on that, I can cut that down, and if I was to drop it, I could pick that up and then eat the carrot. Eating different foods gives you better health, so let's see. All right, make a basket. Yeah, exactly. I need 2 reed bundles, so if I take that to there, drop that, pick up a reed bundle. Now I got a basket. I can put a stone into the basket. I can pick up pick up the basket. Now I can carry a few things. All right. Remember some of the controls on this thing. Oops, end up eating it. All right, there we go. All right, we're dead. All right, so I'm just gonna jump in quickly here so you can see the beginning of an actual game. So you can see I'm born as a baby. My mother here is an Eve, so that's a real player who's playing. I have no idea who it is. And looks like we've actually been born into a family that has a bit of a base or a village going already. So you'll see down the bottom my food meter here only has 4 notches on it. And as soon as it goes below 2, I'm hungry. And then if my mother puts me down, I'll start to get hungry. She can't do anything else while she's holding me. So it looks like I actually have been born to the leader of a group, which is unusual. So they since I started playing, they've added in the ability to create hierarchies of families. So we got someone here with a knife, which is a little unusual, who's obviously just stabbed somebody. Yeah. So you notice that the elders here can type stuff. If I type, I could type H or F, which would normally mean I'm hungry, but let's type W. So I can type W, but I can type 2 characters now. Right. And so she's just cursing somebody, which means that if they get respawned, they'll respawn far, far away from everybody else. So kind of, all right, so I'm now a couple of years old. I'm almost old enough. She's determined to keep me alive. So you see there's quite a lot of stuff here, right? And it takes quite an effort to build all these things, like these roads and pavings have multiple steps in them. So now I'm no longer able to be fed by my mother. I need to go get food. So they're dressing me up in explorer's clothes. So we're kind of young. So the thing that's really curious here, right, is that I've been born into this random person. I'm going to die when 60 minutes is up regardless. I'll get old and I'll become a 60-year-old person. But there's lots of things in the game that can kill me. So normally it's very unusual not to survive as long as I did there first time in. Normally you get born to some random woman in the world who's by herself with no food. And you end up dying at a pretty young age. So you can see I'm actually getting him like a young kid now. Few years old. The bones here of various people who've been left, who've died in the past. So they've built things like kilns and ovens and stoves. I'm sure what some of these things are. So let's see. Steel blank pistons. We got plates here for, I think those are plates. Yeah, clay plates for cooking food on. This is a pretty sophisticated village, actually. So because I don't want to spend the whole time playing the actual game, I'm going to kind of head out into the world. So actually we've got, these are grave markers, I think. Although actually I don't see anyone's names on them, so I'm not sure. So there's different biomes. So I'm now going into this biome where snakes like to hang out. Oh, you got turkey feathers. And the world is fairly infinite, right? So I can travel off in any direction I want. I'm already starting to get hungry, as you see. It doesn't take very long. But I could just go over and grab some berries here. So when I eat food, if I eat the same food, each time I eat it, it'll be less likely to fill up my health. It'll give me less health. It'll always give you something, but it gets less and less as you go along. So they want you to eat a variety of food. Let's see if we can get to a different biome. So we're getting into this sort of swampy area. It says water sources here that you can use. I guess I'm getting homesick, huh? And you know, these people put a lot of work into it. I should probably at least drop off all this clothes and stuff near their house. So I look a little beat up there. This should be up homes this way. So they put down a home marker, which, oops, put my pants back on, which allows me to find the way back home. All right, so I'm going to take all this stuff on. There we go. So I died at the age of 6 from starvation. All right. The thing that's really interesting about the game, right, is that you start out as a baby and you're completely helpless, right? There's no way to survive in the game by yourself. So you're depending on random people to keep you alive. If the game for some reason doesn't have any females that are able to give you babies, then it will spawn you in as an adult female. But that's very rare that happens when the server's even slightly busy. Once you get, if you're born as a female, once you become a 15 years old, you'll have a chance to have a baby. Up to, I think, about the age of 30 or 40 years old. I think it's 40 years old that you stop having babies. So, and the babies come fairly regularly. Like, you know, you probably maybe go a minute or so without having a baby, and suddenly you have someone to care for a couple of minutes. And so being born as a female makes it very difficult to get stuff done around the area that you're doing, right, to do any work. So having males born is good from that point of view, because once they get to puberty, they can basically go and just work and they don't have any other responsibilities. The problem is that if your community only has males, then eventually it will die out and you'll end up with no family. So you might be asking what's sort of the meta game that you're actually trying to achieve here, right? So the goal is to try and create a community, or to advance the world, right, as a whole, and make more advanced technologies. So to give you a little bit of an idea, so there was a university that recently did a study where they used this game to get an idea of how societies grow and evolve, because they found that obviously looking back over, like, you know, hundreds of thousands of years and trying to understand how humans evolved is difficult because they don't have records of it. And when they try to create models in the lab for it, they tend to be very restricted. Whereas they found that by using this game, they were able to create a very complex simulation of how societies evolve technologies and who does all the work and things like that.
Killed by other characters along the way. But if they survive, families can endure for quite some time. The longest running family in our sample survived continuously for 102 hours in real time, which would correspond to over 6,000 years of in-game time. All told, our sample includes over 3,000 family lines, composed of over 300,000 characters, played by over 19,000 unique players from all over the world.
So think about that. They were able to create a simulation of effectively 324,000 people who lived over a period of 6,000 years and had to combine various items together to discover technologies. And while it's obviously a simplified version of discovery, there was some really interesting stuff that they found that came out of that. Most notably was that a very small percentage of the people who actually discovered things. It was only a very small percentage of the families who actually discovered stuff. Most of the others just took on the roles that they were assigned and did things. Now, one of the things that's interesting in the game as you play, as you saw when I started out, I could only type one letter as a 1-year-old, and for every year that you age, you can type one more letter in chat. And because you're spawning in randomly into this game, you never know who you're playing with. You can't. It's very difficult to set up like alternate ways of communicating, like Discord and things like that. There's very little chance that if you and a friend decide to play this game together, you'll actually end up together in the game, which is definitely one of its downsides. If you're trying to play with your friends, or in my case with my sons, it's very difficult to get together. They do allow you to spawn in as together using a code as twins or triplets. But one of the problems that happens there is that that's a huge drain on a mother, and more often than not, they'll just abandon you, which is kind of a miserable existence. But they will, they just realize they can't possibly keep 3 of you alive at once, and so they'll abandon you. So it's a kind of game you tend to play solo by yourself, but then you're playing with a whole bunch of other people and interacting with those people. And what's really interesting is that you would expect that the great majority of time that the game would just devolve into chaos because everyone would be selfish about it. But because you start out completely dependent on other people to even progress in the first few minutes of the game, you start to learn that you have to cooperate with people in order to get anywhere in the game. And then as you become older, you realize that you're going to die at some point and you won't actually advance any further by yourself, and so your children effectively become your ability to progress in the game. Now, one of the things that's pretty cool about it is that they've provided a website that actually you can go to the website and see the family tree from the first person, the first woman that started a family, all the way through. So this family here was her last name that she chose was the family name is Shakes, and she was the first Eve, and she had a daughter called Caitlin. Caitlin then, if I click on her, had 2 children, Emily and Minnie, and it goes on and on until we get down to 17 generations. So if we click on Shakina Shakes, we can see that she died fairly young, and we can also see that the last words of Eve Shakes were goodbye. So when you look at this, you see some pretty funny one-liners that come out of the last things that people say. So one of my most memorable moments in the game was spawning into a family and playing for a little while, and there was a woman who in the game who was like 58 or 59 years old and knew she was going to die in the next minute or so, and she had a bunch of grandchildren and daughters and so forth who were around who knew she was old, and she was telling them how she was about to die, and they were spontaneously literally saying, "We love you, Grandma." And it seemed so genuine, right? They built this real attachment to this person. And one of the reasons this happens is that because of the way that the speaking system works, when you start out and you can't talk very much, as you get older, you can say a lot more. And so people pass on information to other players about what's going on. And the elder people truly become the teachers of the game and tell people how to go about doing certain crafting, how to keep the farm alive and things like that. So it becomes really interesting. And some of these family trees can get absolutely enormous. So this one here is the largest one that's been created on this particular instance of the game, which went for 813 generations of players. So if you think about that in human lifetime, it's thousands of years long. So when we talk about building items and stuff in this game and building technology, and that's sort of what the goal is, to give an example of how sophisticated the game can get, because you saw me there creating those items and mixing together a few items. One of the things I added into the game recently is the ability to create a camera and some film to take a photograph in game. and it takes 528 unique components, all combined in the right ways, in order to get that camera made. And a lot of the items that you get are not trivial, right? So you need to have cattle available or sheep to get certain resources. So you have to basically build up a farm. You probably need material that you can turn into the paper, and so you have to be able to refine certain processes. So it can be quite an in-depth process to get to the point of being able to do that. But one of the rewards that comes from that is, if we go back to the family website, is that you can actually then take photos in game, and people post photos that stay on the website permanently. So this is showing the most recent photographs that have been taken, but those photographs actually end up living beside the family tree of the people that took those photos as they go through. So it has a really cool persistence that goes on. One of the things that also happens in the game is there is a concept of building these obelisks or monoliths that you can do that require an enormous amount of resources and so forth to build. And once a certain number of those have been built, then the world ends. And so that there is a natural beginning and an end to the cycle of a single instance of the game that actually stops. And yeah, like I said, he started off with a fairly simple game, but he had a roadmap that he was going towards, that he's constantly literally adds new content every single week since the game came out about 3 years ago. It's possible at the moment to build roads, to have cars, to build radios, cameras, all sorts of modern technologies. His plan eventually is to have super modern tech, laser guns and robots and maybe even spaceships and things like that. Where the technology would advance to the point of being futuristic almost in the game. It's a really sophisticated game with a really just a myriad of ways in which the game can evolve, which I think is a really cool social experiment in its own right. But one of the things that I think is especially interesting is the way that the mechanics of the game doesn't eliminate, but strongly discourages, not discourages griefing in many ways, right? So they put a few things in to explicitly stop griefing. So you can kill people in the game super easy. If you manage to craft a knife and you walk up to somebody and you can accidentally stab somebody with a knife, when you click on them and you'll stab them. And they'll most likely bleed out and die. And it's very, very difficult to survive any kind of injury in the game. You can create bandages and things like that will heal you, but that takes quite a bit of technology and so forth to create those as well. So, early on, it's very easy for somebody to come around and stab people and kill them. But over time, he's built in mechanisms whereby you can create a posse that is able to band together and go and attack that person and kill them easily. And it creates like the force of the group, if you like, or the rule of the group. Anybody who murders somebody by default then will be spawned far, far away from anybody else the next time they come around. So while you can grief, you can only do it for a very short period of time before the game effectively puts you in a timeout, where you can still play the game, you can still run around harvest, but you're kind of on your own trying to survive, right? What I think is interesting is to think about whether there are other mechanics that you could put into games where griefing is a problem that creates dependencies on other players or things like that would make it so that you're taking away griefing by providing more meaningful things that people need to do in the games that makes them want to cooperate in this sort of organic way that this game tends to do it. So I was going to show you a quick video here of just mute this, of a fairly complex city, although we actually got to see something pretty decent there when we randomly spawned in. Let's just see. So you'll see that this guy here spawns in. Now, what's interesting is you can never get a really broad view of anything in the game, right? Because it only shows you a small part. The other thing that I think's really crazy about this game is how truly simple everything is. Like there's squares that are like a meter by meter square, and only one item can be in that square at any time. Some of those items are containers, but it feels like it would be extremely limiting, and it can be a bit frustrating at times finding enough space to be able to organize what you're doing. But it allows things to be combined in this really crazy ways, and create all sorts of, barrows to drag things around that let you carry more stuff and things like that. We skip through a little bit. You can see this village is quite sophisticated, right? They've got buildings full of food storage places, paths. The paths let you move more quickly around a space and also give you visual cues as to where you're going, much like streets in a city would do. So it's a pretty wild game. So I'm going to do one more thing. Let's just jump into the game one more time. And let's just see if we can spawn into a slightly more random situation. Oh, family trees is actually, that's a link to it there now. Oh, one of the other things you may have noticed too there at the top there, no, we've, it seems like, so you notice in this case, the mother is putting me down so that she can do stuff, right? Because you can't do anything. And as soon as I put down, I can start crying. There's also places you can put the baby that are warmer where they don't lose food as quickly and things like that. And so, all right, so she just said, "You are Thomas." And so that gave me a name. So I'm now, oh, sorry. Let me, terribly sorry about that. Yeah, so she just typed, "You are Thomas," and that actually gives me a name. So if I mouse over somebody here, you can see that she's moving around too fast. You can find a person to click on. Oh, we've got horses, cows. This place has a farm and everything. All right, so this is my big sister, Allie, who I click on here. Right, so Allie has a name. If I click on, let's see, I am Allie. I want to click on my mother. Oh, so Irish is our family name. All right. So my name is Thomas Irish. Right. All right. All right. I hate doing that to people, but all right. So because I died within 10 minutes, then it actually gives me a penalty. I get up to 24 times. So once again, to stop griefing, if you keep dying within really quickly in the game, then it will count you down to 24 times. And once you hit that, it won't let you spawn into the game for 10 minutes. You can only be born once every 10 minutes to try and keep that going. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If anyone has any questions about it, whatever, but I think it's a really, really interesting game in many, many ways. I will say that, in playing it, I played it for a few weeks straight, and I really enjoyed it. But eventually it does become a little bit of a grind, starting fresh all the time. Although it seems that the game has matured now to the point where it's more likely you'll actually spawn into a family that's reasonably established. We did 2 games in, and both times we ended up with clothing and everything available to us. So that would definitely change the nature of the game a little bit, right? That you would normally, what happens is you come in, like to have a baby, they keep you alive until you're like 3 or 4 years old, and then they'll give you a job to do. They'll ask you to do something like tend the fire or make pies or go and collect eggs. More like, a lot of times, just go and collect eggs or go and collect water from some nearby place, and they tell you roughly where to go. And you do that until you get a little bit older, and then they start to teach you how to do some particular craft, like how to make some more complex item. And you do that for a while, and then it's up to you whether you decide that you want to just keep doing that as your role, or become an explorer, or do whatever you want to do. So you definitely have this life that evolves, and as the developer says, no life is ever the same. It's kind of like a real game, a little mini game of life, right? You never have the exact same experience every time you play. And so it's pretty cool. It's not very social from the point of view of being able to play with friends, but it's a pretty cool little game just to jump into every now and again when you're on your own. And obviously, it's never going to take more than an hour to play a game. Usually ends up being 15 minutes to half an hour more often than not. But it's pretty neat. So that's it. Well, thank you everyone who stuck around for that. I hope you found it somewhat interesting.